This is Gemara Baba Basra. Daf Mem Zayin, and we're holding on. Mem Zayin Amid Aleph, we're 4 lines down, going back to the original topic of our Mishnah, which was the Chazaka, potentially of the Uman. Omar Rav Yochanan Uman Ein Loi Chazaka. An Uman, a craftsman that has an item, is not a Chazaka that it's his. But Ben Uman, the son of an Uman, he himself is not an Uman, he's not a craftsman, he has an item, then Yesh Le Chazaka. Aris, Ein Le Chazaka. Ben Aris, again, that's not an Aris, Yesh Le Chazaka. Whereas when it comes to a Gazlan, Ben Gazlan, both of them, Ein Le Chazaka, neither of them have a Chazaka, but Ben Binoy Shel Gazlan, Yesh Lo Chazaka. So it says Rav Yochanan 4 different cases. An Uman, an Aris, they themselves don't have a chazaka, but if their child has the same item and the child is not an Uman, is not an Aris, they could create a chazaka. Whereas when it comes to a Gazlan, both he and his son do not have a chazaka, but a grandson would, yes. So says the Gemara, Heichi Dami, what is the case? What is the story that we're talking about the children? If the case is that when the child has any of these items and he's claiming the asa b'tainus davuan, he's coming with the same claim that the father had. They're saying it belonged to their father and they inherited it. So if the Uman doesn't have a chazaka and the Aris doesn't have a chazaka, why would the child have a chazaka? He's coming with the same taina as his father. And ask the Gemara further, but if they're not coming with the father's taina, then go to the last case, the Gazlan. Afilu ben Gazlan nami. If they have their own claim, why they should have a chazaka? So who cares if the guy's father was a Gazlan? He should, yes, have a chazaka. So what is the case by Rav Yochanan that an Uman and an Aris, the child has a chazaka, whereas a Gazlan does not? Continues the Gemara, like Tzricha, 12 lines down. The first line is Tzricha. The case is that Eidim say in our presence, Befanenu, the person that's now claiming the item was Maida to the father that he sold the object. So Hanach when it comes to Numan, Hanach when it comes to Naris. It makes a lot of sense that he's telling the truth when they're saying their father bought the item, and therefore the child will have a chazaka. Whereas, but in the last case of a gazlan, even if the person who's now saying, yes, he's maskim, that he sold the object to the gazlan, the child is not believed. Why not? Kidirav Kehana, Tomer Rav Kahana, Ilav Doidi Le, Have Mamti Le, Ulechamre, Uleshachvar. Says Rav Kahana, if the original owner did not admit to the robber that he sold the item, the Gazlan would have went and handed him and his donkey over to him. And therefore, the fact that the person is being murdered right now, you cannot rely upon. Why? Because the owner might feel coerced, he might feel forced to admit falsely. Why? Because he's afraid of him. And therefore, when you go and you admit to a Gazlan, it's meaningless. When you admit to an Uman, when you admit to an Aris, so there's no manis. Then the child can have a chazaka. But by a Gazlan, not. My Rava, and Rava goes one step further than Rav Yochanan. Pe'amim shafilu ben b'nai shel Gazlan nami ein chazaka. And sometimes even the grandchild cannot have a chazaka. Hechidami kondasi b'tainasa da'aba da'avua. Because he's coming and claiming it belongs to his grandfather. So then even the grandchild would not have a chazaka. Because just like the grandfather had no chazaka, so to the grandchild. Says the Gemara, Heichidami Gazlan. What is the case of a Gazlan that we're saying that he does not have chazaka? Amar Rav Yochanan, Kigoin We know that he stole a certain field, and now he's continuously living there, so he doesn't have a chazaka. Rav Chisda Amar, ki goin debayis ploini shahargin nefashais al iske mamoin. There's no chazaka like those of Beis Pliny, a certain family that everyone knew them to be roischim. Unfortunately, it would kill people due to monetary matters. I don't care how long that family might eventually be living in a field. It will be absolutely pointless. It will not prove anything of the sort, and therefore they do not have a chazaka. Tanu Rabbanon, continues the Gemara, 8 lines to the bottom. Uman ein loy chazaka, yarad me nasa yesh loy chazaka. Another brisa, and Uman does not have a chazaka, but if someone's yarad me nasa, he no longer is an Uman. Maybe he was a watch repairman, and he hangs up, and he's no longer does such a job. Then afterwards, yesh loy chazaka. Aris ein loy chazaka, yarad me risasa yesh loy chazaka. Ben shechalak ve'isha she niskarsha. If a child separated from his father and has his own house, or a woman gets divorced, arehein kishar kol adam, and they could have a chazaka. So 3 scenarios in which a person originally doesn't have a chazaka, an uman, an aris, a child, a wife. But in all the cases when one leaves the profession, when one is no longer an uman or an aris, or the child or the wife have their own home, then yes, there is a chazaka. So says the Gemara, let's understand these 3 lines from the bottom. Shlama ben Shechalak, Itzrich. I understand why we need to write that case. I would have thought, I would have thought that a father is Michael, his rights to his son, and allows the son to have a chazaka on his property even after he becomes independent. Kamash malon, dilai. Kamash malon. Now that's not the case, as we learned many dafim ago that when it comes to chazaka, what is a chazaka? The very beginning of Cheskes Habatin that we've been learning for close to a month right now is that what that the owner would not let the person be there, would not be meicha unless it's his. So maybe that does not apply to a child. Maybe you don't have the middeloi micha. Normally, if you're in my field and I say nothing, then the raya that it's yours is I was in meicha. But maybe by a child, we do not have that. Kamash malon, that the kid could have a chazaka once he moves out on his own. Obviously, chazak in the father's estate. Elisha niskarsha pshita. That's the greatest midolai micha. Which ex-husband, if they see their ex-wife in their field, of course they're going to scream. So what's the chiddush? Says the Gemara, Laitzricha, you know what the chiddush is? As we turn over to Mem Zayin Amud Beis, the chiddush is b'migureshes ve'enoi migureshes. The classical case of a suffix gerushin ukid Rav Zera, and like the opinion of Rav Zera, we're 2 lines down on Mem Zayin Amud Beis, migureshes ve'enoi migureshes. That what does Rav Zera teach us? The Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav Yirmiyah Barabba, Amar Shmuel, Kol Makov Sh'amru Chacham Migureshes V'inu Migureshes, Baila Chayev V'mzayna. He said the husband has to still support his wife. So in such a scenario, one might think that maybe when the wife is in the property of the husband, it's meaningless. Because anyways, the husband has to support her. So maybe he'll let her just be there. Teaches the Brisa, no. Once there's some level of gerushin, the husband would be meicha, and if he doesn't, the wife could certainly have a chazaka. The Rashbam points out the classical case of migreshes being migreshes. The suffix is when a get is thrown, and it's a suffix if it's karav lai or karav la. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, 5 lines down, Amar li Huna. Says Rav Nachman, Huna said to me, Kulan sheviu rayo. In all the cases, whether the case of the Uman, the case of the Aris, if they bring a Raya, then Kula Nishevi Raya Rayosa and Raya, the Raya is good. Omamidin Sadavi Yadam, and we'll give them their field. Meaning the fact that they couldn't make a Chazaka doesn't mean that they can't have other forms of proof. They could indeed, except for a Gazlon. A Gazlon, Shehevi Raya, says the Gemara, Ein Rayasa Raya. And ve'ein ma'amidim sada v'yadai. My kamashmlan, what's the chiddush tanina? We already learned in a Mishnah. Lokach meisik rikon v'chazav lokach mi balabayis. A Gemara in Gittin, if someone buys a field from Sikrikon, which are people that force someone to sell a field, extortionists, and then he goes and he buys it back from the owner. Mechai batal. So what do we see? We see mamish the same thing that we just said, that a raya from a gazlon is meaningless. So why do you, Rav Nachman, have to repeat the same din that a raya from a gazlon is meaningless? Explains the Gemara, smack in the middle of Mem Zayin Mebez. The first one in line is La'afuke midirav. Da'amar Rav lo yishanu, ela da'amar le chazek v'kini. The Mishnah is talking about a case in where the owner said to the person, go and make a chazak and be kind of the land, but he didn't write up a shtar. Avol bishtar. When do we say it's not a good sale by the masik rikon? When he just told him he can make a kinyan, but if there's a proper shtar, then there is a kinyan. Kamash Malon Kiddush Shmuel Da'amar. That's what you would have thought. So we're teaching the Chiddush 3 lines from the top. Kamash Malon Kiddush Shmuel. That what? It's the same Shmuel. That af bishtar nami loikasav achichtav achrayis nechasim. If you want to be able to have a raya when it comes from a gazlon, you'll not a stam shtar will not be enough. You'll need to have a shtar, and you'll have to have a shtar with achrayis nechasim. And similarly, Rav Bibi Mesayim b'Meshveder Rav Nachman karka ein loy. In the case in which someone has a raya that the karka is his after there was a gazlon, and we said there's no raya, but then says Rav Bibi that's only that you don't get the karka. Avol mois, if you have a shtar, you have a raya, of course you're going to get it. But b'med dvar ma'amurim shamru eidim b'fanenu mana eloi. Avol adim ein b'fanenu hoyd eloi loi. Why not? Like we saw prior, because the fact when one has a haidah in the face of a gazlon, haidah in the face of someone scary is meaningless. 6 lines from the bottom, Rav Kahana Da'amar. He's scared that if he does not admit to him, he's going to take all his items, and therefore his haidah does not approve anything. But if it wasn't a simple haidah, but rather there were eidim, then he would be able to get the money, even though he cannot get the karka. And one last in, Amar Rav Huna. 4 lines from the bottom, continuing the theme of forcing someone potentially to sell something until of his oven. If someone pushed someone, coerced him, till he finally sold the item, it was wrong. You might have even been over in this deraisa of leisachmai to force someone to sell something. But lemaisa, the sale is a good sale. My time, called the mizvan inish, he loved the honest, lo have mizvan. Anything one sells, no one wants to sell something. When you sell it, you feel compelled. And yet it's a good sale. So too in a real case of tlu of zavin, it will be a good sale indeed. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Maybe is a difference when I don't want to sell at all, or when I just sell because I feel like I need to sell. It's a different level. It's true, I don't want to part with my item, but I know I need the cash, so I decide I'll part with it. Maybe that's different than I don't want to sell at all. And you come and you push me and you harass me until I sell it. Ella, says the Gemara, I'll give you a different raya that Tulu of his oven is a good sale, Keditanya, as we learned in a Brisa, and we turn over to Mem Chesam and Aleph. I apologize, we don't have the Amen in front of us. Just 1 line says the Pasek Yakriv Haisai. Melame Chekoifin Haisai. We force him to bring the carbon. Yochel Bal Karchai. Tamalaymer Lertzaina. Okay, it's that. How can you force someone and have it Ritzaina? Famously says the Gemara. We'll pick it up from here on the top of Chesam and Aleph Bisiyata Dishmayo.